Recording fired up and slow play it out. There we go. So I learned how to do the slow play out there. I used to do the abrupt stop, which was a little bit more jarring than anything else, but we're excited to have you here today. And thank you for joining us for this session during Global Entrepreneurship Week. This conversation is From Athlete to Entrepreneur, featuring the founding team of Street Soccer USA here in Sacramento and entrepreneurs and athletes #made at Sac State. And we'll get into our conversation here shortly. But my name is Cameron Law, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Carlson Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship here at Sacramento State. I'm also the Sacramento organizer for Global Entrepreneurship Week, and we're excited to have you here for our fourth session of 5 here today and 30 overall throughout the week. So we're excited you're plugging in for this particular session. I'm joined today by one of our team members, Arlene Miranda, who provides administrative and marketing support for the Carlson Center. But at a high level, if you haven't heard about the Carlson Center, we serve as a regional hub and platform for providing approachable and accessible entrepreneurial education, community, and support to enable startup founders of all backgrounds to explore and launch their businesses. And we're on this mission to really make innovation and entrepreneurship pervasive throughout the greater Sacramento region, and realizing this vision to make Sacramento a premier hub of innovation and entrepreneurship. And Global Entrepreneurship Week is one of those events and activities at our Discover phases of programs to really connect entrepreneurs to inspirational opportunities and the education and community they need to succeed. And so I'm really excited today to have two entrepreneurs made here at Sac State, Lisa Reitzman and Tiffany Fraser. I apologize there. Lisa is the managing director of Street Soccer USA Sacramento, and Tiffany is the program director and coach at Street Soccer USA, as well as the chief talent officer at St. Hope Public Schools. And I'm really excited to have a conversation with them. I also got to know both of them through the Nehemiah Emerging Leaders program. So we're excited to be fellows in that particular program. So I'm going to now unshare my screen. Is this a good time for me to share that video for you?
Yeah. Tee it off.
All right. I'm navigating my mini Zoom screens here, so I apologize. Give me the second here. All right. And we're going to go right here. Boom. My toolbar wouldn't move. There we go. All righty.
We envision a world where everyone has a dream, a team, and the skills and opportunities to make that dream a reality. We are Street Soccer USA, and this is the Street Soccer USA Park.
We believe the way to improve the community is to bring it together, making the community a team with the same desires and goals, giving it pride in its own people, cheering and rooting each other on.
We see this place as more than just a field. It's a meeting place, a place to make friends, meet your neighbors, to have fun. A place of solace, a place to build confidence and grow, and a home for redemption.
Street Soccer USA parks are built to last. To sustain our success through ingenuity, efficiency, community support, and an unparalleled passion to succeed on and off the field.
We are its youth, its leaders, its heroes.
We are the ones behind the scenes and the ones that inspire. We are Street Soccer USA, and we are bringing this vision to life.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that link with me to share that video. So we will get on started with our conversation here. So just hopping in, wanted to kind of kick off. I know I shared at a high level that you both were the founding team of Street Soccer USA here in Sacramento, but would love to get to know a little bit more about both of your backgrounds. I know you're athletes here at Sac State, but would love to hear a little bit more about your story, and then we can jump into some of the additional questions.
Yeah, so attended Sac State in 1999 on a scholarship, soccer scholarship. And prior to that, just, kind of played soccer the majority of my life and just found it a very safe, fun place that I just, I loved being at. And because I loved being there so much, I think I got better, which was kind of what led me to playing in college. I didn't really strive for that. It was an opportunity that came up and I took it. And to be honest, I didn't want to, I'm from this area, I'm from Elk Grove, and I really wanted to move away, go to college away. So I joined a team that traveled around the country, and so that I could get offers away. And then I went to a tournament, and turns out a Sac State coach was there, and she asked me if I wanted to play. And I didn't even apply to Sacramento State. But I will say that it ended up being a very positive experience, and I did really well. I actually had a good career playing there and wanted to go pro, which the league was folded and canceled due to funding my senior year in college. So there was no longer a pro league. And, that was kind of devastating for me. I didn't realize how much I hadn't prepared for the transition of not having a team, not having a community, and going to the real world. Without having like my passion a part of that. And so, I got into drugs and alcohol really badly, eventually kind of pulled my life together and was introduced to street soccer very shortly after. So we can tell you more about that, but it's a little bit about my background and how I have stayed and got affiliated with Sacramento State.
Yeah, mine, I think I actually did what maybe Lisa was trying to do. I'm from the Bay Area, and I got the chance to come out here and kind of get 2 hours away, that safe and healthy distance from your parents, where they can still come up and do your laundry or whatever and watch your games. But so I came out to Sac State. I actually walked on to the team because I had a few other offers, but really wanted to play Division I. I really wanted to, I didn't have plans of playing after college. And so I wanted to play at the highest, college level I could, but also still kind of be an integral player. And so I walked on, and then ended up, by the time season started, I was starting and, being able to make an impact and be, an impact player, and then was offered a scholarship before the end of my freshman year, and stayed on for the rest of my college career at Sac State. Had an injury in the middle of it, which gave me an extra year, but at the same time, it allowed me to have a marketing internship within the athletic department, have another year to just build relationships and community out here. I got to be on the first team that, won a conference championship on the women's team. We have a lot of, crap talking in the house about that. I walked away with the ring. Lisa had a bunch of individual awards, but,
Records.
Yeah. So, it was a pretty amazing experience. I Mark and Lisa, who are on this call, saw this weekend a number of our college teammates were out with us for our first anniversary at the park this weekend. And so a lot of the relationships made at Sac State are ones that, completely changed my life. And I have to give a shout out to Adam. I just talked about this marketing internship I had. I definitely wouldn't have made it through college without Adam, and for all sorts of stories and reasons, but happy to see Adam.
I love it. Well, so much resonates with me. I don't know if I played baseball in college as well, and that transition from what do I do next? Although the league didn't fold, I just the MLB was definitely out of my grasp. So I quickly learned what was next for me, and I can definitely relate to some of the challenges and just, I think some of the similarities of being raised in Sacramento and wanting to get out, but then the sport kept me here. I did cross the causeway and play for the Aggies, but I will say Sac State always whooped us, so you can have that for sure. So, but no, it's definitely one that I think is really key to look at. What grounded us for a portion of our time and kind of was a passion, right? And so, one of the things as you looked at when you graduated, how did you kind of hold on to that athletic mindset and start to embrace that entrepreneurial mindset? And, one of the questions that comes to mind is, as you were playing sports growing up, was there always did you have an entrepreneurial mindset? And, sometimes there's a story of people selling candy and things like that. Was that part of, your experience, or was it just athletics and kind of that team building and purpose-driven work that kind of led you to where you are?
For me, I did not sell candy in the corner. I wasn't even allowed to take a public bus when I was a kid. Like I could barely ride my bike to the next little apartment complex. So I wasn't doing that. But when I was finishing up at Sac State, I think my senior year, I was on the kind of student athlete, the NCAA student athlete council, and we had a representative, or we had a bunch of companies that would come and talk to our group, and one of them was from Northwestern Mutual, and really all I heard as he was kind of talking about and kind of recruiting was like, all I heard was this opportunity to be competitive, which was a sales kind of natured world. And so that was exciting to me, the chance to go somewhere where I can still kind of, compete and drive towards something. So that was kind of one of my first instances where I saw myself really, wanting to, or seeing some of my interest and things translate from soccer to something else. And then I think through that and just early relationships out of college, I was around people who were starting businesses or, driving their own, initiatives or businesses forward. So it became very normal for me to be around people that were doing something that maybe nobody else has done. So that I think set something in my mind that like, it's not that crazy to do something that nobody else has done.
I don't, when I look back now, yes, but I don't think I realized that I had an entrepreneurial spirit in me until street soccer. But I was the kid like selling candy, pizzas, like for something, and I hated it. I was so uncomfortable going door to door, and you're like, do you want to buy these? Like, but also, it wasn't like high stakes. I didn't get it. But for me, as a player, I had no problems working hard because I loved the game. But I would say I was more in it for the passion, but I don't think, I wasn't drawn to the competition. But I ended up in competitive environments because I excelled as a player. But for me, what I think is really interesting now looking back is, I was a forward majority of my life. Like where I got hooked in soccer was the ability to score goals. And for those of you who know the game, and even if you don't, I mean, it's no surprise, like everyone knows where you're trying to go. So it's like there's two goals, you're either defending one or you're trying to get to the other side. And so, I always got good at like thinking of other ways that I could get there. And like my size didn't seem to deter me. The fact that they understood where I was trying to go didn't seem to deter me. And it's a position where you're going to fail more than you succeed. Like you're just, you have to be okay with the misses. So when I look now, like when we started Street Soccer USA, like that was a very similar spirit where you're just like, a lot of my conversations are like, well, what if we tried that? Like, what if this would work? And you just kind of go for it. So I think, when I look back now, that's definitely what exists, and probably what helped us to drive Street Soccer USA is not a traditional form of rehabilitation for adults or anything. So it really took a lot of shots to get people to understand what we were trying to do.
Right. Yeah, no, I remember the first time I heard the pitch during fast pitch, it was like, wait, I could see where the connection was, but trying to figure out that story was certainly a key component. So thanks for those answers. Some of the things that, certainly resonated with me was one, you'll fail more than you're going to succeed, right? I think that part of that is, I would imagine, learning how you can do it better the next time in terms of when you're attacking the goal, or as an entrepreneur, learning from, hey, this messaging maybe didn't quite resonate, or this program we tried to launch didn't quite have the impact we wanted. How do we continue to strive and work towards that goal? Although unique that you both kind of came from different, perspectives of getting, one was selling candy, the other could not sell candy, but nonetheless, that kind of competitive and passion-driven focus, allowed you to be entrepreneurial in that space and solve a key problem. So for those of that don't know about street soccer, can you share a little bit more about what Street Soccer USA Sacramento is and some of the impact that you do? I won't put you on the spot to do your fast pitch. I know you've done that already, and people probably don't know what that is, but we can talk about that later as well.
Yeah, but to be fair, Cameron, we didn't get the grant for the park until the second time Lisa did the fast pitch.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's like not a terrible thing. Just throw it out there, see what happens.
Someone got us in the room. Well, yeah. You're the national.
All right.
talent. I'll pick up anything that you miss.
All right. Yeah. So Street Soccer USA, initially, really it started with the intent of finding a way to really create relationships and help people move towards their goals, right? And the people that they're working with initially were folks at a homeless shelter. And what the two founders found they were lifetime soccer players and were working at the soup kitchen, and they would get a ball out and kick the ball around with some of the clients there. And they found they were able to build relationships and have conversations that are, otherwise, much more difficult sometimes to have on the other side of a desk. And so they started to really see that, hey, through the game and this space where we can provide, teammates, a little bit of coaching, some instruction, help people learn something new, learn something about themselves. They were really starting to see some results and outcomes in these clients that particular shelter wasn't seeing before. These folks were more motivated. They were more interested in accomplishing a goal because there were people that actually cared to know, that they did it or not, or that they tried. And so that was how it started out early, in Charlotte. Lisa mentioned that when she went to rehab and was in transitional living, that's when she got introduced here in Sacramento. At that time, it was just a men's team. And they asked her to play on it, and it was a very grassroots, level. And then, after her experience, she came back with this, motivation to share this with anyone that she could. And that was sort of when we crossed paths. And
sorry, I think too, a couple of things that were happening that were unique to the shelter, and even for myself, was in the shelter, they were noticing as they were engaging and playing soccer with these folks that they were able to get to the root cause of what was really holding the individuals back. That, the individuals were kind of letting their guard down a little bit and open to having just a regular conversation with somebody versus well, I'm going to tell you this is the problem because this is what I need from you. And so that was really helpful in, dealing with their issues. For me, it was sobriety was something I was terrified to do, and I was not excited about it. It's just the alternative is I'm going to die and I'm going to be in jail. That sucks too. So when I got sober, it was I didn't know much about it. I didn't know anybody that in my family or anyone that I had ever met that had an alcohol or drug issue and stopped using. I only knew people that were still doing it. And so my idea of that was a very depressing life. That was just going to be lonely. And, all I visualized was a dark room, having some job maybe that I hated. And so when I started playing street soccer, I started to really open my eyes of what a life could be with my sobriety. I could have my sobriety and still participate in things this way, and starting to feel joy again, things that I had just forgotten that I was capable of feeling. So those were pretty important things that I think that our participants connect to. Is they want more in life, they're doing hard work, because they know it's the right thing to do, but they're not expecting to feel better. And so when they start to feel alive again, it's like, oh my God, like I want more of it, like any addict, give me more. I don't have it. More.
Yeah, I think that it was at her transitional housing too, where when she started working with some of the women there, they were getting custody of their kids back. They were moving their lives forward. And, we were able to see families kind of reunite within the game and have positive experiences. And so all of that kind of fueled what we know now, and what we've heard from our participants too is, had I had a coach when I was younger, like maybe had I been on a team, maybe I wouldn't have gone down this path. And so when we started to see that in the kids and hear that from parents, I think that gave us all the evidence we needed to, make sure that this can exist and be an opportunity for folks. And so, flash forward 10 years now, we still work with adults transitioning out of homelessness. We still work with, women that are St. John Women and Children's Shelter, where they're maybe getting out of DV situations. We work through our park. We're right across the street from the oldest projects in Sac, the CV Circle and Muir Park projects, and we get to work with all those kids and
and the new safe ground.
Our safe ground neighbors too. So yeah, that's kind of what we're doing now and what it is and kind of how we got here.
I love it. Well, it's such an innovative approach to making impact in that space. And one of the things that came is just like changing the space that those conversations tended to take place, right? And it to some degree could feel like a safer place to have that when you're playing a sport and maybe you just scored a goal and you're like, wow, this is a new high that feels good, and one that now I might be open to having that conversation and creating those connections for sure. And for me, also looking at the sense of community that comes around just sports in general, right? And building a team, and then also kind of building your team in life. So I think it's such an innovative approach, and one that, when you first hear it, you're like, oh, question marks. But then when you, continue to listen and explore it, it's, truly transformative, and one that, I think is, we tend to think innovation as a technology, but, it's really innovative in the way that you're changing value and driving impact in a different way. And so I love the work that you all do. And so, yeah, one of the questions is, as a kind of, entrepreneurial minded individuals and, as you're building Street Soccer USA Sacramento, what were some of the, challenging times and maybe some of the big, jumps or leaps that you may have taken, and how did you work together to kind of, go about launching that?
Well, that's a good question. First challenge for me was that, I participated in this national tournament, Street Soccer USA. I'm like, just mind is blown. I'm super excited. I'm, 6 months sober. And then I go to a homeless World Cup, which just like, blows my brain up again. And like, this is unbelievable. Like the power of the game that I've been, tied to forever. And recognizing that the people that were, I don't want to say that there were a lot of players who were not skilled because this was a homeless World Cup, like they didn't play soccer their whole lives, but the value they got out of it was the same or more than somebody on the winning team. Hadn't seen that before, like a lot of other people. And so when I came back super eager to like, we're going to do this, and, we've got a team of women, now we've got a fundraise, my history and just being a few months sober, asking for money was like not really good. And, there were other things. So that was a big challenge. Luckily, Tiffany had a credible life and long relationships that were still intact. So that was like a place we were able to collaborate. And so I could kind of, people were like, I'm really happy for you. I just can't give you money yet. I was like, understand. That was a challenge. I think our biggest challenge was probably like getting people to understand what we were doing. And
so they had warned me that the puppy might come into interaction. So no worries there. So just the
other part of it was Tiffany and I understood street soccer like so easily, like it made so much sense to us that when we talked about it to people, you know, your reaction is like, why would homeless people be playing soccer? And our reaction was like, why wouldn't they? Like, there was like this sort of mental block. I'm like, I don't understand why this isn't easy for you to understand. So that took a lot of chances at figuring out like, how can we get people to connect with what it was? And a lot of the solution for that was take the soccer out of it. And, you know, a lot of people have someone, they're affected by a loved one with a mental illness, addiction, homelessness, all these things. And everyone can agree that like, you want that person back in your life. So that was kind of like, you know, we had to adjust our storytelling until we could find people that understood it the way we did. And when we found the people that got it right away, they became our board members. And I think I'll let Tiff chime in, but I think that was always kind of the root of our challenges, was just like, it wasn't an easy thing for people to understand. In the United States also, there's a ton of judgment on homelessness. Like there is like this attitude of, well, why would I help them? They put themselves there. So that's another tough barrier to break. You know, you just got to find the people that get it and just don't worry about the ones that don't, but still have the conversations. And then, you know, fundraising in general, like it's tough. We're not a loaves and fishes. We're not like, you know, serving hundreds and thousands of homeless adults, but we are making a good impact with, you know, a few in like a cohort. So we just had to get really creative in how we could find people to sponsor, which was not your traditional sponsorship. So the last 10 years, we've kind of created a model that the nation or the national program uses, but it's still, you know, you tailor it to your city and to the city's needs. And I think the other challenge with expanding our youth, and you might have even heard this in the SVP fast pitch feedback, was a lot of people don't realize how expensive soccer has become, and they don't even believe that someone doesn't have access to it, which is like not the case. You know, like we see soccer fields everywhere. Why would we add another one? Like, oh, right. Like there's 30,000 people that aren't at that field, but you see the ones that are. So that was just a lot of education, and then trying to connect the mission to make it personal to the people that we were trying to, you know, get on board and kind of believe in it.
Yeah, the other thing I would add is like in the fundraising piece, it's like we want to ensure that our programs and our chapter is sustainable, and it has, you know, infrastructure and you know, has those pieces that are going to allow us to be around for a long time. And one thing that I didn't realize, how much people don't realize this, that like the first 5 years, neither of us worked for street soccer. Like we did this as volunteers outside of our other jobs. And I think like year 5-ish, Lisa, you know, we had fundraised to a point and built our board and, you know, raised money to the point where we can have Lisa be on as a staff member. And, you know, up until October of this year, July of this year, that we hired on a second staff member here at SAC. It's not me, it's someone else. So that's one thing that I think is notable, and for anyone kind of like we've accomplished a lot, and but Lisa's our only paid staff member. We have coaches that, you know, when we get funding for programs, we're able to pay coaches and do that sort of thing. But it's been a lot of work to get us to this point, and you know, the insert of the park allows a different kind of sustainability. But I think that's a challenge that like people like our board and my involvement have been, you know, stuff that we've had to place around Lisa and around this chapter to allow to come. So sometimes like people have kind of misunderstanding around like how we're actually getting this stuff done, and it's like the voluntary like contribution of a lot of people. And so it'd be a little misleading to, you know, we're still trying to like build this thing while we fly it. So
Totally. Well, and I think that's like, you know, coming from, you know, social venture partners where I was, you know, the only team member as well, I can certainly, you know, that makes a ton of sense. Of capacity for nonprofits is a really challenging area to be in. And it's kind of the the gift and the curse of you want to seem bigger than you are. So people fundraise and fund you because they're like, oh, you seem sustainable, but then you're, it's kind of like, oh, well, then some are like, oh, you seem pretty funded with all the people that are engaging. It's like, no, we only have one paid team member. So I can definitely resonate with that. And I think, one of the things you talked about was telling the story. And I think broadly, even about just entrepreneurship is, so much of that is telling your story, right? Is even if you're trying to bring a new app to the world, why care about this app compared to something else or this other, non-for-profit organization or what that might be, is really telling that story and focusing and honing in on the impact. And I know certainly the fast pitch experience hope to refine that for sure and connect certain dots, I think, for people that maybe saw the impact area and then, actually tied to the space that you're creating through soccer to mobilize that change and impact. And so I have just a few more questions and then want to turn it over to our audience here if they have any particular questions. And so one of the things, thinking back to your time as a student athlete, if you were to kind of be in those shoes again, how would you start to kind of prepare yourself for, post graduation? It's always the hard, conversation for someone in a university to say, hey, professional, you don't want to tamper the dreams of someone playing a professional sport, but also preparing yourself for what lies ahead and maybe how those experiences could, come to fruition. And so I'm curious if there's any words of advice for some of those student athletes that might be in the space to how they can prepare themselves and maybe pursue their own entrepreneurial pursuits.
Definitely. I didn't see what I'm doing today is anything real in college, but if I were to go back, I would definitely have more mentors. I don't think I got an actual mentor until I got sober. And then, Nehemiah Emerging Leader Program connected us, in the best way to some mentors and relationships. But I wish I would have built relationships in academics and even just in the campus and saw teachers and professors as people instead of an authoritative figure, and just had coffee, asked them about themselves and got to really understand who is the person behind the operation and businesses, not to get anything, but just to learn, just really understand that there are people. But I definitely wish I would have had some of those relationships off the field, because when we all stopped playing, we were all doing very different things, so that those relationships were really more personal. But I wish I would have built more of a support system in the school, because when I left, I didn't feel like I had a connection anymore to the campus until much later. But Tiffany's a good example of what happens when you have these relationships that started her freshman year. And there were people we went to with street soccer when she first got involved. So I'll let her tell you more about it. But I would say have a mentor that's not a part of the sport, talk to people, take people out to coffee, just, try to learn about the individual. And then, they'll care about you. And once people care about you and are invested, they want to see you successful, and they'll do what they can, or, just someone that, believes in you, I think is really important.
Yeah, the mentoring thing and just building that support system, that's been some of the best advice I've ever gotten and some of the better decisions I've ever made. And, building relationships with people that, can look out for you and will look out for you or support you or give you advice. That is certainly one of the more important and meaningful things that I've ever done, or advice that I've taken advantage of, is just, go talk to people and ask them for, explain whatever your situation is or whatever you're thinking about, and ask for their feedback. And, does me a little bit? Does this sound crazy, or does this sound real, or what else do I need to do or, give me some other advice. But, asking for advice, I think, is huge. The relationships on campus, I think I would have told myself to build more. I don't even think I went to the Union ever. I just was in Yosemite and Lassen and the field. And, I literally didn't even know what people were doing in the union. And so I wish I, had intentionally made some other connections. Thankfully, I did have, Adam and Heather, who, right, wrong, or otherwise, she will answer my text every time I get hurt. She's in the training room, and she saw me on this recent ACL. I mean, Lois has always been there for us. But that's probably the most important thing, is realize, especially as people that have been around campus for a long time, like, they're probably there because they care and would be interested to make a difference. They're to be helpful. And so, recognizing that sooner would have been great. But so many of those names and people I just mentioned had such a big role in, me being able to have a support system onto the next, chapter. And again, like 15 years later.
I would say too, like, I don't know if I would have taken the advice then, but I wish I would have like sought out, or like someone would be like, hey, maybe like a therapist or like something to deal with before it exploded. And I don't think I would have, really listened, but if I had felt comfortable, I wish I would have felt comfortable enough. So I don't know what that would needed to have been. But if as an athlete, when you add on like the difference of also, we were getting like 3 hours of exercise a day. So maybe you're fine, but then you start to cut that out, and maybe there is chemical stuff happening that, just never talked about. And so I think you don't want to be dealing with that when you've lost your community. Like, it'd be better to address before and then just not be afraid of it, but that would be the other thing I would.
That's a great point. I wish for some reason the exercise we could bank earlier on and use now, because my exercise certainly has gone downhill after playing a sport. So I love that point.
Had problems sleeping in college. Like,
yeah,
ever.
Indeed. And I love that both of you hit on mentorship. I think that's a really key thing. And I know kind of how it's been positioned in the Nehemiah program was kind of building that personal board of directors, right? So it was looking at who in your life can help kind of support you in different fashions, whether that be, continuing to be an athlete to some degree and exercise to connect you to, your entrepreneurial pursuits or whatever that might be in the future. So I love that. And then certainly we are people behind the scenes. So the students that are out there, definitely, have those conversations. I certainly believe people on campus are here for a reason and wanting to support you in wherever your life may go. So I think that those are certainly great points. So the last two questions I have is, one, is there anything that maybe I didn't ask about related to your story or the entrepreneurial journey that you'd like to share? And then what can this community do to support both of you and Street Soccer USA? And then we'll open it up to Q&A for who's here.
I guess you could ask. I think we maybe, one thing that I don't know if we touched on, I think part of our trajectory and, which included 5 years of volunteering, and then trying to find the right people to support us, was that we were doing something fairly new, at least new to the US and other parts of the world. This is a very normal thing. Like, they don't have a hard time raising money for social soccer efforts. It makes sense. But we had to really show it. Once we could show it, people got on board. So like the park, for example, now is helping us, a lot. One, because people can see what it looks like and they understand it. Also, it's allowing us to generate revenue ourselves instead of having to wait on a grant or wait on a sponsorship or alter what we're doing to fit some kind of funding for that cycle. But we had, some events, and you had to get savvy on social media, because without people being able to see it, it was hard for them to relate. So that was one thing that we had to get really good at, I think. But there's also a challenge, like, I'm not going to exploit these people who are fighting for their lives so that whoever, thinks it's important, like, and that was a tough one too. I'm not going to sell out these lives, they're people. So luckily, I think we had some good values kind of embedded, and that's the whole thing with Street Soccer USA in general. Like, there's some good roots and core values and culture that kind of allow us to not have to ever feel exploitive.
Yeah, I think to your question on just how do people support or how, be involved with street soccer, one thing that has been important to Lisa and I is that it can be a place where anyone can be involved. And, we've, over the years, those opportunities have grown and broadened, but we've always wanted to make sure people could see themselves or find a way to fit in. And so it's whether it's as a player, like people just knowing, our players knowing that, you can come from whatever background you're coming from, we will embrace and include you. But I think what's been really cool is now we're in this position where you can be more than, like, you don't have to be a player or a funder. Like you can come and cheer people on. That is an extremely important role. We have a lot of kids that come out that don't have people cheering for them out there. So like that is really important. You can, of course you can be a sponsor and a donor. I'm definitely not going to stop you from doing that, but you can be a board member. You can, we had some of our alumni players that they were trying to get a job, but they don't have any work experience. So we created a little marketing internship and they can run our social media for a couple weeks and prove and show consistency. And, and they happen to be, all over on social media much more than we are. So we found a space for them to contribute. So we always tell people, and it always works better if you're bringing your passion to the table. But, if you know what that is, like, let us know. We'll find a way. We'll find a way to include you and let you, kind of spread your wings there. And so I think that's something that I'm really proud of is like, we will find a way for you to plug in and be involved. And best case, it aligns with your goals and ours, and, everybody wins. So that would be the other thing that we hadn't touched on yet.
And like last is like, just, don't be afraid to try things that are not traditional. Like when we started to push for Street Soccer USA, literally all I had was my story. I didn't have any money. I didn't have a job. I had a criminal background record, didn't have a license yet. Like I was still considered homeless. And so like, what do I have? And like that was what we had to leverage. And it's still one of our more powerful pieces. But, just because you're not getting through doors one way, don't let that deter you. You just got to keep going.
So love it. Well, Erica threw in your Instagram, so definitely hop on there and peruse and find some ways to plug in, whether that be standing on the side rooting some kids on, or if you're wanting to fund or get further engaged, there's certainly opportunities for that. So Erica, do you want to ask your question? I think yours was the first one that I saw come in.
I'm on the spot. In full transparency to the group, I'm a board member of Street Soccer USA and friends with Lisa and Tiffany. Maybe two parts here. One, you guys are also partners in life, not just on the pitch or in the nonprofit world. So again, how do you balance that? Because I think for most startups, it starts as a family affair, and that can be a challenge when it's all things all the time. And the second piece too, you touched on, I think, a little bit, but maybe for this group to understand, I think one of the things that drew me to Street Soccer as a board member is this idea of a little bit of a social business enterprise, in the sense that we have means to produce revenue that isn't necessarily, it supports the mission, but doesn't mean we constantly have to just rely on grants and other foundations. So just food for thought for anyone else, especially if they're looking at the nonprofit sector. Ladies, I turn it over to you. And Heather.
What did you want me to start? Or you want to start?
The best way to start is that we went to dinner for an anniversary last week and wasn't quite sure which anniversary it was, because like the park's anniversary was, Lisa had 12 years sober last week. Our wedding anniversary is this week. So we just like put anniversary on the thing, and we're like, whatever. But we had to plan this event that we had yesterday or on Saturday. And so, I mean, it turned into being a park anniversary dinner, but like that's a perfect example, I would say, of where like, yeah, it is all things all the time, but also, we came up with some really great ideas and had a really awesome event. And so I think, we've been super fortunate that both of us love soccer, that both of us, have similar backgrounds playing at Sac State. Like that allows there to be some of these really sticky connection points that make it very easy and natural. And we have a similar track there. But I think, also, like I said, I'm not a full-time staff member here in Sacramento. And I think that has been a really important thing for me. I've supported and helped in all the things, but it to me was really important that wasn't that I was still doing the things I was doing because I wanted to do them, and that was my relationship with street soccer versus that was also my full-time job, or even the pressure of like, all right, well, maybe we don't get enough money, who's getting fired? Like that would be a weird conversation to have, so like finding out where those boundaries kind of need to exist. I do work for the national office of Street Soccer USA, which sometimes there's some moments where I'm emailing Lisa to send something into me because I need, and we're right next to each other, and then she's also scheduling me to ref that night, so these things happen. But
Sending the calendar invites right next to you.
But I think like that we have had to identify kind of where some of those boundaries exist, but it's been a little bit easier, I think, because we do love this and love, it's been amazing to build something here together and both have a passion around that. So that's made it a little bit easier, I think, than some other dynamics.
Yeah, I would say too, like, I think what drew us both, different things drew us to street soccer. And I think the role it played was actually pretty healthy for both of us in a different way. And so I try to be conscious of it too. I mean, there are days where it doesn't feel healthy. It just feels super stressful. But I think for both of us, it's like, we just have to check in with each other. And if it gets to a point of it not like being healthy, like we have to look at that, because it's also something that we draw inspiration and passion out of. So we never want to lose it. But that's something that we have to just check in with each other on and be like, hey, like, it's not worth it. Like we can find someone else to do this thing if it's, getting to that point. So when it is healthy, it's great for our relationship. It's something we get to do together, and we get to celebrate it together, and both individually get to get whatever kind of healing that it gives to us, or that thing that you do that, why people do service work. It's very grounding. We're never really around superstars, it's like, so that's healthy. I mean, that in itself is, we're never above the people that we're, serving. And I'm super committed to that. Like the day that I can't bring them with me for an event or a celebration, like we've made a wrong turn. Like it's all or nothing. We all go together, and it can never be about me, and it can never be about Tiffany. I think we try to do that really well. It's like, it's always us. It's always a we thing. And if we're not bringing somebody else with us to the table, then it's not in the right place.
Laylee, do you want to ask your question?
Sure, thank you. So I'm learning a lot about what you all do and have a lot of appreciation for that. I'm wondering if you would speak on what the unique needs are for Street Soccer Sacramento compared to people in other places across the country.
Interesting question. Immediately, I want to say awareness. I think there is a sense of belief that everybody has access to sports, which is not true. And I think that it's becoming there's not enough information quite that shows the impact that sports can have, whether you're winning or losing. Yeah, you want to invest in a winning team, great. But, there were some kids that rode the bench the entire time in college. And I asked myself this all the time. I was like, why are you playing? You literally are running all the sprints we're running, and you're never in a game. You never travel. What, and I never thought about asking them why they did it, but it meant something to them. They were there because it served a purpose. And I think that's overlooked at any level of the game, which I think that other countries have an understanding of, because their model is different. There's some countries where whether you're the best kid in the country or the worst kid, playing on a team is the exact same price. your ability is what dictates different coaches, but like the cost is the same. And so I think those are a couple of things that, you know, we don't do super well in the US. You know, when we started working in the neighborhood across the street in the projects, predominantly African-American kids, and we were offering like free soccer to the parents. And they're like, why would my kid play soccer? Like basketball and football seemed like an avenue into a better life, but they're just like, we're not connected to soccer. I was like, well, they'll come home tired. And she's like, okay, there you go. Like, you know, the kind of understanding the different ways it can serve a person and a family, I think are big places of where we can improve the messaging and access the play.
Yeah, and Laylee, I don't know if also you were wondering about kind of the demographics that we work with, but real quickly, you know, we started working with a lot of women and men that were in recovery programs, because that also was, you know, some of Lisa's background. And so and conversely in Minneapolis, their team is working with a high volume of refugees out there, Somali, Ethiopian refugees. So, and that's where the person that's leading there has their background. And so in terms of some of the communities we work with around the country, sometimes it's dictated a bit by who's leading it. And sometimes it's dictated just by the needs of that, you know, market in LA. And in Philly, they're dealing with a whole lot of gun violence, drug issues, gang violence. So not that we don't have that, but it's much more concentrated in the couple areas they're working in. So, you know, that's where it can kind of look different from market to market, I would say, with street soccer.
Can I add one thing?
Lois,
no drug tests. Just kidding. I'll take one.
Well, and I will say, Lisa, you were a little stubborn. I don't think you would have listened to anybody back in the day. So, we were talking about the positive qualities that street soccer's brought to the community. I just want to add that they brought a lot of positive, at least to our women's soccer team, and through volunteering there.
That's Lois.
Yeah. Not many people like know us through like that long of a period. College and then after and then now.
Cool. Adam, I know there's multiple of you there. I don't know who had the question, and if you want me to read it, I can, or if you want to unmute and whoever asked the question.
Can I unmute? There we go.
Yeah, there you go.
So it's not Adam, it's Wes Oberlin.
What's up, Wes?
What's up? I love you guys. But my question has to do with messaging. You know, street soccer, as Lisa was mentioning earlier, it's about we, right? Who we bring to the table and how can we bring someone else up? And my question is in regard to who handles that? Do you guys handle it yourself? Do you guys take ownership of that? Or is it like, hey, I want to, you know, like you said, bring in an intern or bring someone else in to help us grow the organization? Because where you guys started to where you guys are now, that growth is exponential. And so that messaging has to be consistent. And so I was curious of, you know, who takes the reins on that?
I mean, I would say we definitely do and have. It's a little bit of it's been a much more organic thing for us too, because of the nature of like Lisa's story and just the fact that she can deliver it, you know, and it's never going to be different. It's going to be her story always. And so that makes it a little bit easier. But I know some of the other chapters, you know, they're telling the stories of other people, which is fine. And they probably deal with a couple different challenges, whereas we've had the, you know, luxury of having Lisa who's kills it on a mic and can get up and deliver that. And then I think this is where kind of that partnership does come into play. Usually people that put us on the same screen on a panel together kind of see we tend to speak the same, we're around each other all the time, you know, so that really helps with a consistent, you know, vibe. But in the same regard, I would say right now for building the park, when we started our social media for the park, And we're, trying to build that brand or build, that culture. We probably wouldn't have let too many other people just post on, there. And that was really important. Even to today, there's only myself, Lisa, and then our other staff member who he's been around street soccer for over a decade.
Tiffany's pretty protective of our passwords,
That's
as you should
grammar
be.
thing.
Could be. She's a defender.
Yeah. So we're thoughtful about that. I might let people make some graphics and then I'll post them, but but it is important, and there is a specific culture that and it is one where you got to have the diligence to go get people's handles and tag them on it and make sure they feel included and take pictures of so I think there has been a decent amount of intention around that.
I would love to delegate it, but it's tricky. I mean, you want someone to get it, and that's not something we come across all the time. And where we are now, people come and go. They want to intern, great. Like it's 3, 6 months, 12 months. So it's like find something that they can get into. But yeah, I mean, we love it. Like there's a part of it where we enjoy doing that kind of stuff. It's a very reflective process.
But from a messaging standpoint, the people that would and do contribute the most are those that are former participants or current participants. Like those stories will always be true too, so that's something that's really awesome, that anyone that experiences street soccer or the park, whether you're a board member or whatever, it's consistent and simple what we're delivering. And so your communication of it is probably not going to be too different than reality. I might not actually let you do the post, but you can give me the content and I'll do it.
I don't foresee a Street Soccer USA Sacramento takeover, social media takeover by anyone here.
It is important.
No, it is indeed. Well, I think we are just at about time, and wanted to just say thank you so much for the time today and sharing your story and just so many great insights. So wanted to give you the virtual round of applause and just appreciate all the work that you do in our community and for sharing your story with all of us. I know it's certainly inspirational, and one that our students and staff on campus will walk away inspired and hopefully continue to foster that community. So I really appreciate both of you taking the time, and it was a great conversation, and hopefully this community is now mobilized to further support you in street soccer.
Yeah, I would say continue supporting. I mean, it's pretty unreal to see Lois and Adam, and we were just with Mark this weekend. Wes and I were in college together. Erica's on it. This is actually definitely one of the more fun and kind of just a trip of a Zoom to have memory lane right here staring back at you, which I wasn't expecting. So thank you guys, especially those that have known us over more than a decade.
Well, thank you both. Appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you about in the community. And hopefully everyone plugs into the rest of Global Entrepreneurship Week. So we have one last event today starting at 4:00, and that's the Sacramento Entrepreneurial State of the Union. So we hope to see you then. And I threw the link in the chat if you want to register. And thank you, Lisa and Tiffany, for your time and energy.
Thanks, Cameron.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye, you guys.
Bye.